Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 14. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks.
Hello.
And Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio.
Hello.
We live stream the recording on YouTube every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or UTC plus 10, or you can watch or listen to it later on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get your comments towards the end of the show, but feel free to chat amongst yourselves as we go. The idea being that this is also a place for people to meet. So I've just got a couple of announcements. We got a fair bit of love over the last week from everyone. David, as a party, hi guys, just wanted to say great job with these podcasts. Trent left us a question, which we'll get to later, and just said keep up the good work. Rob Parker, love having an Australian twist on things. Jay Smith wanted to say hi from Brisbane. Brett Guthrie, loved the comment. Burn marks or makers marks from last week's show. And Rob McKinnon, fantastic information. So yeah, we had a lot of cool comments come in over the week. Cool. So thanks very much, guys. Really do appreciate that. All right, so before we get into this week's episode topic, let's do a quick rundown of what everyone's working on. I'm going to switch things up a bit. And Jordan, do you want to go first for a change?
Oh, I don't like change. Yep, let's do it. This week, no one really knows this yet. I'm leaving on Saturday for a few weeks to go out on a job interstate. So it's just been a quick tidy up week. So as far as things I've been making, I made a wine box for a client. They just wanted a really quick and easy box for a wedding present to put a Magnum bottle in. So I made that with a little engraving. What else? I've made a couple of chopping boards. So while I'm away, hopefully a few of those will sell and top up the piggy bank. And I think that's about everything for my making, but I have been doing a lot of, catch-up stuff. Like I've done my bookkeeping today, so I'm up to date, and I've been trying to convince myself that it's a good idea to buy a really big laser cutter from China.
How big is that? How big is big?
It's a 1.3 meter by 900 mil cutting area.
Nice. Jeez, that is quite big.
Yeah, and I'm really keen because I can get this thing landed for $5,000. It's a special price. It's not the usual price, obviously. And my current laser cutter, it's a bit too small for my surfboard kits, and I've just arced out the power supply, which means that power supply no longer works. So I don't know. I don't know if it's worth me doing it because I think I could get some work through it and I could definitely use it for a lot of tasks, especially
it's a cutter, not just an engraver, right?
Yeah, proper cutter. So 130 watt cutter. So it'll be able to cut 17 mil plywood very slowly, but it would be able to do it.
Plywood, or is that any wood 17 mil? I don't know how lasers work at all, except on TV.
That's probably plywood. It would do, I'd say softwoods or just not very dense would be fine. But really what I see myself using it for mostly is the surfboard kits, because I still get emails about them weekly.
Okay.
So if I have a machine that size, I can literally cut 4 kits at a single time and wrap them up and send them out the door. And also doing signage and my own packaging and all that sort of stuff could be cool. But yeah, I don't know. That is something I'm trying to both convince myself to do, which I think I will, because I will be able to get a bit of money for my laser once it's fixed, and I'll sell my X-Carve and all of that sort of stuff for it.
Just speaking about the X-Carve, so in my workshop, my father-in-law's got a full-size CNC from CNC Radaparts. And he's actually mounted a laser onto the gantry as well. So
is that a diode or a CO2?
I wouldn't like to pretend like I know what that means. It's really just an engraver. You can't really cut with it at this point. But the idea that we could engrave a full sheet of plywood with whatever you want is pretty cool. Having it being able to cut would be even cooler.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way that you could marry two things together as well, and have a bigger surface. I guess it's a whole lot more work, but
Well, this machine, how do I say? It's got the panels on it which you remove, so you can pass through.
Right through, yeah, cool.
Yeah, so 1.3 meters wide, so I can still slide a size sheet onto it.
Yeah, infinitely long.
Yeah, and like if I just do it so on whatever I'm engraving, I do 2 witness marks at either corner. When I slide it through, I line them up with the next program. So it would be really cool. It's just it takes up a fair bit of space, obviously.
Yeah.
Which I have got somewhere I can put it. It's just how quickly will I get the return from it? And all of that sort of jazz. And I've got it down to about 30 jobs, which wouldn't be hard. No, not at all. Yeah, but that's my impulse buying
Splurge
update. Yeah.
So is it a case of it's when, not if, at this stage?
Well, the price itself was only going to be valid for like 30 days. So it is a matter of when I can actually pay for it, because like I think I'll get most of the cash for it from selling my current laser, my X-Carve. I've also got a few trailers which I no longer need with the truck, and I've been meaning to flog for the year since I've had it. Just haven't done it.
That'd be almost all of it.
Yeah, it would be almost everything paid for. But it was just I was planning on putting all of my money from this job I'm going away for onto my debt, not onto my toys. So
Creating more debt, yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Cool.
What about you, Robin?
Well, I've had another unfortunately quiet week. Just day job taking up time. But there's 2 things that I have done this week. One of them is extremely important. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen I finally feel like I've got my SketchUp wings on.
Yeah, I did say that.
Wow, man! Like when you guys said to me last week or the week before, I can't remember, was when we talked about the design phase. You said that it's really easy to learn. At that stage, I'd only ever looked at it for probably 10 minutes, and I thought these guys are talking rubbish. I've looked at this. This is really difficult. It's not going to take me that time. But literally one video by a guy. I'll actually put that in the description for this video. I watched one video and then obviously figured out stuff along the way. 2 hours later, I designed the cot for my baby coming in June, and it was amazing how the stuff you learn in the beginning, just it's easy. The way it evolves into the more complicated stuff is just like it's so simple, and so put together a whole cot all to scale, and wow. Awesome. One thing I was so amazed by was that obviously how simple it is to work, but how now I can see why people use it. It's so cool to see what you're thinking about and being able to make changes to a real life, a life size or whatever scale model of what you're looking at. Oh, so good.
And you can actually work out a complex piece of a project, go and look at it upside down, inside out, backwards, see what part they're going to touch other parts, and it really is just genius. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So sorry, go Jordan.
I was just going to ask, have you dived into components and groups and all of that with your progress so far?
Yeah, and this is what I talk about, that progression, how it was simple to make that progression, because I got to a point where I'd started extruding shapes, and I thought, but now I want this to be a shape. So it's going to be something like a group or a component, right? Component. Make component.
Right.
Easy done. Yeah. So now all my legs are legs, all my rails are rails, and I didn't even have to look at a video for that. It just made sense.
Yeah, cool. It's really intuitive, that's for sure. Yeah.
So a perfect example on the cot that I'm making, it's basically Matt Cremona's design. I'm not even going to try and say any of it is intelligent on my part. But the one thing that he did was his rails are rectangular stock, and so when you're looking at it front on, his legs are in this orientation as opposed to this orientation, right?
Yep.
When I was designing it, I accidentally turned them around
Okay.
Just not thinking about it. I was just going along, and I got to the point where I wanted to put the mattress rails on. And I went, hang on, this is not going to make sense. And I would never have picked it up if I hadn't used SketchUp.
Making it, yeah.
Yeah, I would have just gone ahead and made it, got to that point and gone, oh crap, now I've got to work around this. So yeah, there was that moment of this is why people use it.
Yep. It's awesome.
Really cool. So other than that, I've been trying to get the stock for this, and I've decided to use Meranti,
Cool.
which I think I'm a bit nervous because it's pretty soft. It's a lot softer than I thought it was going to be, but it is fairly cheap, which is why I'm doing it. Because all in all, like just for the stock, it's coming up to like $300.
Yeah.
Which is
not
expensive.
Babies are soft too, so
Exactly.
she or he won't dent it. It'll be fine.
Oh, well, I thought you meant more from the perspective of it, collapsing. From that point of view, it's a family heirloom, I'm happy to put some money into it, but I priced it in Tassie Oak, and that was twice the price.
Huh.
And the reason why I'm looking at Tassie Oak and Meranti is those are all, you can get them from Bunnings dressed, because as I said, after my dining table, I don't want to do any milling on this project. I just want to put it together. And but the problem is Bunnings doesn't stock that much Meranti.
Right.
So I went out last night and got everything that I could, the bits that weren't bananaed, and I'm about a quarter of the way through my stock. So I said to them, when are you guys going to get more? Oh, probably 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to have to drive around Townsville, all the different Bunnings that we have, to try and just...
Yeah, how many Bunnings do you have in Townsville? There's a few, isn't there?
It's either 2 or 3, I'm not sure. Because I think one's being built sort of 50 Ks from, or maybe 20 Ks from where I am, but there's definitely 2 functioning,
Right.
one main one and then one sort of smaller one.
Because there's a Gunnarson's, maybe. I think there's a Gunnarson's in Townsville. And on the West Coast anyway, they have huge amounts of stock, usually of Meranti and, that general grade construction stuff.
Ah.
So maybe look into that. Have you got an ABN?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so you can even ask them just for a trade price list, and they'll send through what they have. I've used them a lot of times over here. They've been great.
Gunnarson. Yeah, I might look into that then. Because the other problem is that it's not that I don't trust the Bunnings material. It's just, it's like, it's not balsa wood, but it's pretty light, and I'm a bit nervous about that.
Yeah.
That Gunnarson's place, we have a Gunnarson's here, but they are specialist in plywood. Is that the same as?
Yeah. So ours is Gunnarson is one of my plywood suppliers, but they're general construction and all sorts over here. Yeah.
They only do plywood here.
Oh, right.
And it's only trade. Like no one knows about them.
Yeah. You need to have an ABN over here still.
Yeah.
But,
They do too, George.
One order a year, and they're fine with that as long as I have the ABN.
Yep.
They
do have it here. That's really interesting. All right. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Cheers. I might.
Give it a crack anyway. It's worth saying.
Yeah, and the problem is it's going to take me weeks to accumulate all of the stock at this rate, so I have to wait for them to keep building up there. Yeah. Anyway, so that's it from me. Joey, what's been going on with you?
Finishing off a kitchen. Just finished it today, and funnily enough, had a client walk in the door yesterday and saw the kitchen and said, "Right, I'll have one of those." So I'm off to his place tomorrow morning to measure up. And
so this kitchen, is this at your house?
No, I'm doing it. So I'm doing a kitchen for a client at the moment. Just finished it, and so because I had all the prices in my head, I had everything, and so I was able to just tell this guy it's going to cost this. Well, this is how much this one cost. This is how we make it. This is all the cool things you get. And he said, "Yep, come to my house tomorrow and measure it up. You can start it next week." So I was like, "Okay, I'll just squeeze that in." So I think I talked last week about someone being interested in the chairs that I built, a retailer. He's now also interested in the walnut sofa that I built. And so he wants not a 3-sided version, just like a standard kind of 3-seater version. So I'm looking at pricing that or working out a way that it might be manufacturable to do multiples. So that's interesting. But more interesting, so this is a couple of stories about why you don't want to work, or why it's so difficult working for big construction companies. So the first one, very prestigious school, high school, I think, yeah, it's a high school in Auckland. They're adding on a giant building, and they had to cut down a pretty big rimu tree. And it's a bit of a side project. It's not in the scope of the building at all. They just suddenly have this pretty large tree that they are thinking about getting furniture built out of. And so I get a phone call from this guy from the construction company saying, give me a price. What's it going to cost for you to make a table? I'm like, okay, a little more information. So then I finally get that the tree's just been cut down, and what's the fastest way? Can we have furniture in a month? What is the deal? So it turns out that the guy I'm talking to is kind of 5 tiers down the chain of command. And I'm like, well, let me just talk to the person who's making decisions here. I'm not allowed to do that. I've got to deal with this guy, and he forwards my email on, and then that guy forwards it on, and so forth and so forth. So it turns out what they had, somebody had drawn the tree in CAD, the log that had been felled, and split it into like 25 mil planks in CAD, right? And then so they had this huge file, and each layer had been split, and they had like allocated all these planks out of the tree to make stuff.
Oh wow!
Because that's the way like drying works. Yeah. Everything. 100% yield.
No allowance for any curve, no allowance for any deviation in the straightness of the timber. So I end up getting this big, long, like a massive thread of emails, of all these 5 different people talking with some. I don't even know who all these people are. But I ended up talking to someone a couple of tiers up the ranks today about it. But it's so typical of big construction companies who are just tendering out, trying to get a tender price in. And they just, give me a price. And then, it just has to be an estimate. Okay. And then they'll ring you back and say, that quote you gave me before, does it still stand if we change something? I'm like, well, I didn't give you a quote for a start. Like, we're just talking random numbers. The tree is still just laying down on the ground. Like, we're months away from anything happening here. So I thought it was just a really interesting kind of insight as to these guys don't care. They just want a price, and they just want to move on. Like,
sorry. Now, I don't know if you said this in the beginning. Is the tree still green?
It's just been chopped down.
So they know that there's going to be a 6 to 12 month.
So yeah, I mean, they've had discussions with the local sawyer, who's actually, I know through my YouTube channel. He's a really good guy. He's almost a local to me. And I ended up calling him and saying, what do you know? So the other interesting aspect to this is that it turns out they're going to have about maybe 3 cubic meters of usable timber, which is a huge amount.
That's a big tree.
Yeah, the school is saying they were under the impression they would only have enough timber to make 1 tabletop. And so
someone was trying to score there on the side.
Well, who knows what, and that's why I said, well, there's no point in me quoting 1 tabletop. You're going to have enough timber you could furnish your all the furniture in this dorm room, you can make whatever you want. And so that kind of threw a spanner in the works, and people are scrambling for what are we going to do with all this spare timber. And so I have no idea what's happening with that. The whole thing is just crazy. But so that's one awesome story about construction companies not knowing what they're talking about.
Just one more thing before we push up from there. So you in that situation, you just want to talk to the person making the decisions.
I wanted to talk to the actual client and see, what do you want? Do you actually just want one dining table, or would you rather have a whole suite, or would you rather have a couple of, what do you want? And then let's see if there's enough timber for that. What style? I can't give you a price unless I need some kind of reference here. So I'm just picking out numbers in thin air, saying, yeah, sure, I can make a dining table for $3,000 probably. Like, who knows?
Isn't that what we discussed last week? Never doing?
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking that question is because this is something that the listeners might come across sometime in the future. Because I know, Joey, you've said to me before, I must be very careful if I ever do commercial jobs. And this is, I guess, something that you've got to be aware of, that you might either have to deal with that chain of command or just say, nope, not for me.
I don't mind. I wouldn't mind dealing with the chain of command if that person can just give me a drawing, give me some information that is useful, that we can all agree on. This is what is being priced for. The only reason I felt semi-comfortable giving some numbers over the phone is because nothing's happening until this tree is dry. We're at least 3, 4, 5 months away. So any prices I give are void. Like within a month, all this is just nothing. So I don't mind just giving some random numbers. So kind of in a juxtaposition from that, another construction company got in touch with me, and they wanted some very large MDF boxes, just really boring, clear-coated MDF. I know I won't go into what they're for, but essentially just stupid big boxes, all full sizes. You could only get one piece out of each sheet of MDF, so it was just all offcuts, just terrible stuff. So anyway, I come out with the price, $3,000 plus GST. And so I get a phone call back the next day, and the guy says, look, the other quote we got is more than double yours. So just on the down low, add another $1,000 on for yourself.
Wow.
And you've got the job.
Good dude.
Good on him. Sure.
Yeah, okay, that's great. I was like, oh, all right. That's very nice. And then he said, we only pay on the 20th of the month. Won't pay your deposit. We won't pay in 7 days. So I said, well, I need a deposit. I'm not doing it without a deposit. And he said, oh, well, maybe we could use a work business card or some credit card to pay you the deposit. I was like, okay, but I still need my final payment in 7 days. He said, no, it'll be the 20th of the month. So I just said, no, can't do it. I won't take it on.
Could you not have sort of pushed him to say, well, let's just do the job later on in the month? Or did he need it? He needed it now?
It was based on their timeline. Like it had to be, there was like a 3-day window when they needed the stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And whatever date that was didn't matter. So.
Yeah, there's a military fabricator just down the road. Like he's not military, but he does a lot for the military. But they have the same policy. The certain day of every month, there's no upfront payments, no nothing. And yeah, he obviously bases his work around that, so he can plan for it. But still, it's not.
It's pretty standard for commercial big companies to do the payment system. But I think it's really not worth your while as a small maker. I mean, I consider myself pretty small time still. It's not worth being out of pocket for a month for a job that's going to cost me $1,500 out of my pocket to buy the materials. It's just not worth it, especially when construction companies come and go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So,
a buddy of mine works for the cranes down Adelaide. And he does work for pretty big jobs, and he says it's just crazy the way these guys just businesses just liquidate, done. Yeah,
it's just and then you're locked out. Literally, you're locked out of the job site, and you can't go in and get anything that's yours. So it's not cool. So my advice is just don't do it. It's not worth. Even if you did broke and you need the job, it's not worth it, in my opinion.
So bottom line, is that a job?
He just said, no, it's fair enough. I'll just go to the other guy and pay them more.
I'd rather lose money.
That's
crazy.
Well, but I mean, like if that's the way he operates, that's the way he operates. I guess that everyone just shakes hands and walks away.
That's right. Everyone was happy. It's just, okay, you can't do it. Fine. I guess they get it fairly often.
Yeah. But then there's Joey just sitting in the corner with a small tear.
Yeah.
Joey wasn't happy.
I mean, it would have been a nice way to make a little buck, because making an MDF box takes about 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, these were big, so let's say 20 minutes. But even then, it's like, just got to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
Which probably leads on to the topic a little bit.
Did you have any was that the story for the topic, Joey, or was there something particular?
But that just happened to happen this week.
Right, okay. So basically the topic that we're going to talk about tonight is when stuff goes wrong in the shop, but it could end up a bit broader than that. But basically when stuff goes wrong, when you've got to deal with clients that are tricky, and basically, and all those scenarios, like when you run out of, I guess, when your confidence is a bit down. My case, as more of the hobbyist, it's just about finding time is like my biggest issue. So, yeah. Was there anything that you had in particular, Joey, that you wanted to start off with?
I just thought, so when, I guess my experience with when things go wrong is not very often. I don't recall ever having a job that is just completely turned to shit. Like I'm sure there's been days like I cut things in half that shouldn't be cut in half, but I can go and get another piece of timber, and that's just part of being human. So most of my experiences with things going wrong is when there's an issue with a client, and the client's, I guess it comes down to expectations to a certain degree, and I guess communication. I always feel like I have really top-notch communication. I'm always telling clients where the job's at, and like I say, I give them drawings so they know exactly what I'm going to be making. But there are a handful of times when this stuff doesn't go very nicely. So one example that people would be able to look at on YouTube is my neoclassical tables, which are probably at least a year old, if not more at the moment. It's a really cool, big French oak table with big turned pedestal legs, and delivered it. By the time I got home, there's an email saying, "You're a professional. How come you made this so badly? I can't get seats all the way around my table." So the pedestal, so this table had kind of a double pedestal in the form of an H frame, kind of like a farmhouse table type thing.
Right.
If you picture like a Gothic style banquet table, is kind of what it was. And so they're very close to the ends. The legs are very close to the ends of the table. And so you can't sit on the end of the table, which is the whole style. It's designed to be sat from the long sides. And that's what all the drawings showed, as far as I could tell. But so I get there, and she said, this is meant to be an 8-seater, and I can only get 3 seats down each side. And actually, she didn't say any of this. This is all in the email. When I delivered it, everything was happy. She was great, loved it, which is always nice. So it became and I read this email, and I'm sitting there thinking, the initial reaction is, angry, and you say some bad words, and it's in the drawings, and then you start to second guess yourself. You're like, shit, what did I actually send her? So you've got to go back and so you've got to go back and look at the drawings you actually sent, and what did you actually write? Did you mistype something to give a wrong impression? And in this case, it was obvious to me, but not conclusive. The drawings showing that there wasn't enough room for a chair to be put on the end.
Ah, right.
I couldn't have printed the picture off and said to her, here's the proof, because the angle just wasn't 100% conclusive that there wasn't enough space there.
Right.
And so it was on me then to go and pick up the table, and I had to what did I have to do? I had to cut the stretcher out, throw it away, make a new stretcher, rejoin it, shift the legs apart, and I had to. So there was lots of patching work. There was mortises to be filled, and I don't think it took that long, but I had to spend, better part of a day fixing it, painting it, staining it, then delivering it again, and just that awkwardness.
So did it end up with 4 down either side, or did you get the heads?
No, sorry. I ended up having to shorten the legs. I don't know why I said extend it. We ended up. So what happened though is that it completely changed the scale of all the proportions were out. She could get her chairs all the way around this table, but when you stood back and looked at it, it just looked like it could topple over. Like the legs were too close together, and the table should have been another kind of half meter longer to allow for that. And so from that point of view alone, you could almost hold up the picture and say, look, this looks nothing like that when you look at the proportions of it. And so, because I really should have said, look, you're going to have to pay for this. This is an extra now. You're changing the scope here. And so that's a very difficult conversation. And it's not very often that you actually get to say, look, you're going to have to pay extra now. I hate saying that because I feel like whenever I give somebody a quote, that's the price. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
But as soon as you say, oh, I need to change the color, or, can we just make it slightly longer? And you've just docked all your timber like that minute. And you're like, no, we can't make it any longer now. Like, this is the length, That's when you say, right, you're going to have to pay something money here. So,
and I guess that situation's a bit tricky as well, because it's not like she said, I want my white table to now be green. It was, there was a bit of a misunderstanding. So,
I've had something similar almost happen, except I managed to spot it before it actually started getting built.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing is I drew it out again in SketchUp, and I drew in like the 450 by 450 cubes in SketchUp, and I laid it out around the table, and I was like, oh, this is going to be too tight.
Yeah.
And then I contacted the client and said, I didn't realize that you weren't wanting to use the ends.
Right.
So we got to redo a little bit of the design, blah, 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 and I caught it. But since doing that, I've actually made sure I put the 450 by 450 cubes with adequate spacing on one side of the table, and then like at the ends in one of the proofs. So then I've got the seat represented. It's not the seat, but it's a pretty standard seat.
Yeah, I've never done that because I've never really thought to do that, I suppose, because generally a client will come to me and say, I want the table to be this size because it's going to fit our space. So you're like, all right, well, that's the size of the table. You can put as many.
So they don't say, I want a 6-seater or an 8-seater.
I've never had that, actually. It's just,
I always have them with the size, saying I want it to be like 2150 by 800. And so, well, it's pretty narrow, but you're not using the ends, then that's fine. But I've had it quite a few times with stance behind me now, is because that's only a 6-seater, but it's 2 on either side and the ends. Yeah. And people say, oh, I want that, but can you make it 2.1 meters instead of 1.8? I said, I can do that, but how many people are you wanting to seat? Because it's still not going to extend to 3 people on the sides.
Right.
Which, it will do it at 2.2, but not at 2.1. So I always offer them an alternative design if they need that.
Yeah, so I was curious, I suppose, because I've had probably, I think I can think of maybe 5 jobs in 7 odd years where I've had to just walk away and say, keep the money, or here's some money back. We're like come to a brick wall. Like, you're not negotiating, you're not listening. Just that's it. I mean, is that kind of thing ever happened to you, George?
I've been tempted, but I've never had to actually do it. So the closest I did come is when I cut my finger last year,
right,
on that countertop, and that would be probably my most hellish client to date as well. Not that he was a bad guy. It's just hospitality people are.
How can you be so inconsiderate to cut off your finger while you're trying to do my building?
Yeah, and well, the thing that annoyed me about it was the last minute addition of an infill that he needed, and I was working late because it had to be installed the next day. But I got there with that build, and he had a drink rinser that he wanted inlaid into the bench top, which I wasn't told about. I needed to cut a recess for the conduit, which I knew about, but I didn't know the location, so I came with everything for that. But then there was the steel frame that he put it onto. He told me it was between two walls, so I allowed a scribing area to get it all done, and there was no two walls, so I didn't need to do that. So my scribe area, which I allowed, was, I have the bevel. I do the 2-degree bevel, pretty standard. So then that bevel was hard up against a wall, and it looked like shit. Sorry, this is PG. It looked like ugly. So I had to, it was back and forth, and I ended up, this was all with one hand out of action as well. So, I was very tempted to just say, sorry, I'm going to give you your money back. I'm keeping the wood because it was a nice sized countertop. I could make a few tables out of it. Yeah. But luckily, my old man came to the rescue, and I taught him how to use a router and stuff properly.
I think maybe a good way to go here is when obviously you're talking to the client at first, you'll think like you're always judging. You're trying to gauge what kind of person they are. Generally, is it worth my time? Are they serious? And obviously, at some point, all the boxes get ticked, and you say, right, this person seems legitimate, and they're going to pay me what I'm worth to do the job. At what point do you decide that, God, I should have taken this job? Because suddenly, as soon as the money comes in for the deposit, things start getting demanding. Or was there a point where you were like, this is no good?
Yes, it was around the point where he rang me for the 4th time, changing what was needed for that particular job. Now, I don't want to be generalizing here because I'm sure it's not the case, but in my experience, this is my lawyer speak coming out. Every hospitality job I've done, mainly cafes, I haven't really done anything other than cafes, have been just rat races. Like, they're the most difficult clients because they work at night. They don't work during the day, so you can't deal with them easily. And they don't ever have a clue of just what they actually need. Like, every time I've had something, which is quite a big deal, be presented to me on install day. But I just find it's always with hospitality, something little in their mind is actually something very big. I don't know if that's the case with everyone or it's just me being unlucky. But
generally, I find almost every client, when I've done anything that's built in, we'll finish the install and say, oh, great, everything looks good. And as soon as you're here and you've got your drills out, which I haven't, I just packed it all up and put it in the van.
I have them out.
Yeah. Can you just, so a while ago I installed a wardrobe right in the middle of the city. Everything was packed away, 4 stories down in the van. Oh, as soon as you're here, which I wasn't, I was leaving. Can you put like 3 catches on my windows, drill a hole in the wall to put this bolt in so I can hang a thing off the wall?
So I'm your handyman now.
Yeah, it was literally all the handyman jobs that hadn't been done for 4 years. And you're like, okay, I've allowed to be here for this time, so I'm getting paid for it. But at some point, you've got to, like, this is not my job at some point. But you also, it's very difficult to say, nah, stuff you. Like, this isn't the job.
So are you talking about a scenario where they are paying you, but you don't feel like you're a handyman?
Well, I say she's employed me to drop off something else. In this case, it was a wardrobe. And then when that's finished, then she says, oh, my window sticks and I need a new latch on it and I need something else hung. Completely unrelated. Just because I've got the skills and the tools doesn't mean that I should be there to do it for free. there's a way up of like, okay, I have actually allowed to be here for this 3-hour install, so another 10 minutes is okay, whatever. And you might get, it's a case of, am I going to get good reference by word of mouth? Probably, if you stick around and do the job. But sometimes and especially when the client's sitting over your shoulder watching every move you do, don't scratch the paint, but put the screw in the right way. Like, oh, don't strip the screw head out. You're like, okay, this is a freebie.
Yeah, it's one thing to be like asked, oh, you're nice and tall, do you mind changing this light bulb? Yeah, not a worry, I'm here anyway. But it's, could you just refit my entire bloody pantry door for me? No, I'm good.
Yeah. Oh, my door's sticking. Can you just shave a bit off the top?
Oh, yeah, no worries. I'll just go down to the van and get my tools, and that's when you start up and just drive away.
Yeah, and hopefully you get paid. See, that's the problem, because I don't have my final payment until
you got 7 days or whatever.
Yeah, so you're still trying to.
I'm still trying to get paid here.
Yeah. So, Joey, do you find like your conversations with the clients are obviously very it's all business, but is part of the problem the personality differences, or is it the scope creep? Because I imagine surely there must be, without being mean, there's going to be some clients out there who are just arseholes.
Well, that's what
you've still got to work with them.
I've never encountered one of them.
So it's very difficult to talk about, but I will. You don't like to think of people as being assholes, but I think sometimes they're not. They just don't understand what's involved, or their expectations are so high for some reason that they suddenly it's just crazy. So one pretty good example of this is I was hired to make 3 large pieces for a girl. She was young, mid-20s. So I was all my dealings were with her. And then on install day, she said, I'm not going to be there. My dad's at home and he'll let you in. Great. Dad can give me a lift with stuff out of the van. Well, it turns out that the dad was actually the money bags. He was paying for the job. His English wasn't great. So that's why I was dealing with the daughter. All these pieces were in fact for her parents' house. And so the first piece came in and there was some imming and ahhing, but generally okay, that's okay. And then...
Sorry, has she seen these pieces at all? Has she signed off?
So they had all samples. So everything's based from sample colors. Yeah. And I've got half of the sample color and she's got the other half. So I cut the sample in half. And so the second piece, the mother comes out to the van and just says, no, take it back. I don't want it. It's not good. Actually, it was the wrong color. And this is stained pine, really the darkest brown you can get. And it wasn't dark enough for her. Yeah. And I'm like, literally, you can't. If we go darker than this, it's black. We don't want black. So the only way we're going to deepen this up is to just put more coats of stain on it. Said, and unless you want to pay me, and actually said this right there. It's like, unless you're going to pay me to take this back, pay for my labor, because I'm going to have to unload the van and all the things that go along with that. So they agreed that I could do it in their. I could restain it in their garage, and they would pay for the extra materials, extra stain and everything. And so I can't remember how it worked. I did it, but I ended up having to restain it in their garage, and it was an absolute nightmare. Yes, I got reimbursed somewhat, but just the fact that she didn't. It was just one glance at some of these pieces, and no, it's not good enough.
And it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, because surely at some point they would have said, all right, well, you can use our garage. And you must have thought, you know what, the money is not worth this.
Yeah, but the problem was because this job particularly was 3 big pieces. And they said, which is not necessarily legal, but we're not paying you anything until you fix this one. And so
So was it just one piece they weren't happy with, or all three?
There was two. One of them was perfectly fine.
Right.
The other one there was a burn mark from a router on a piece of molding.
Maker's mark, yeah.
Yeah, maker's mark. And so I had to get through the finish. It was one little tiny spot. Seriously, could not see it, but they found it. And then this other piece, and so it was a case of, okay, we're not paying you anything and for the other final payments until you finish this. And this is a considerable amount of money that I'm waiting to be paid.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, maybe just spend a couple of days, get this done, because otherwise I'm really in a hole. Even if they don't pay me for this job, I need to get paid for the other two. You could probably go to court for it, but that's more expensive still. I mean, it's just not worth it. So, that was particularly not fun week.
And if they were to come back to you now and said, "Can you do another job for us?" Would you take
Absolutely
it?
not. Absolutely not. Because I know what their absolutely unrealistic expectations of quality.
Even if they were to pay you a good deposit?
It's not about...
It's not about the money.
The money at this point. It's about that they don't understand that you cannot build a perfect piece of furniture.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that does exist, those sort of situations where you just say it's just not worth it.
I cannot please this person in whatever I do, even if it's out of my own pocket. I just walk away from it. So
I'll tell you what, as someone who's trying to own his own business, who doesn't do it yet, anyone who works 9 to 5 realizes that sometimes you've just, the crap comes down. That's how it works. And sometimes you just got to take it. I cannot imagine how awesome it must be able to say. It must be to just be able to say, you know what? I don't like you. I'm just not dealing with you, and just walk away. And that's it. That must be amazing.
Yeah, it's a very big decision. It's something you can never do lightly, I think, in this game, because we're so reliant, I think, on word of mouth for work.
Yeah.
And that one person has got a big family, and then they've got friends, and in a city the size of Auckland, that might not really make a difference, but that it's still out there. And those people probably still are not recommending me to people. So you've got to really weigh up that cost of long-term loss of work versus short-term loss of money, and happy, unhappy clients, or is it just not going to work? It's a pretty, it had kept me up at night a few times, where what should I do that's best for the business? So in some ways it's much easier just to be a 9 to 5 worker and say, oh, boss told me to do it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, zero accountability. Yeah.
It's quite different when you're the one who's going to make that decision of pissing someone off.
Yeah. Because have you ever been in the situation, particularly in early days, where you've just taken a job because you need it, and it is, you're only making a couple $100 or barely even that, but you've taken it because you haven't got anything else on, you kind of need the cash, but you also look at it in the regard of this could possibly lead to more work.
Yep. And it turned out absolute shit.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because, that happened, well, it wasn't early, but it was when I first moved into this shop, where I did 2 slab benches, which were massive for this client, like a commercial client. And, these were $6,000 for both of them, which could have been easy, but they wanted a live edge, like single piece live edge and all of that. So
those the Jarrow ones that you had on your channel.
Yeah, so the profit margin was nothing, and then I kept getting delays from one of my old neighbors who fabricated the base for me, because he said, "Oh, I can do it really quick." Yeah, you can do it quick, can't you? But you didn't. So yeah, he keeps coming to me asking if I want any more made, and I keep saying, "Oh, I haven't got anything that needs steel. Sorry." But yeah, so I had that. but it never really led to more. I had them, actually, that's a lie. Today I got a phone call from them, but I have quoted for them again and didn't get that job because of whatever reason. And then today the guy that originally came to me rang me and he said, look, would you be interested? I know last time you were really pushed up against the ropes with the cost, and this time, give me a few examples of what they've got going so it won't be so tight. And I was conflicted because I know that I made nothing on the last one and my time is worth way more than that. Yeah. But after actually talking to him and hearing that I should be able to make an actual reasonable amount of, markup on it.
Actually, an interesting little side topic. I know that we're running out of time, but when you have it or do work for a client and they have a certain expectation of what you cost, and then 2-3 years later they come back and have an idea and want you to make something and have an idea based off your previous cost.
Yeah.
And for me, I have been steadily increasing my costs of what I charge. And so when someone comes back to me and like, well, this is more expensive than it should have been. How come last time it was only this much?
Inflation's a myth.
Yeah.
And so that actually, I've lost a couple of jobs because of that.
I think that might be the reason why I lost the last job.
Right.
The same. I mean, they're a huge company. They got places all over the place. So
yeah.
I was dealing with, but they wanted, instead of 2, they wanted 3 similar sized tables, but it was going in a really old place, so weight was an issue, so it had to be made out of something fairly light, but they still wanted it to be solid and all this, so I put a fair bit of time into quoting it, and the room was not that big either for 3 big tables. Like, it had to be perfectly sized for that room.
Yeah.
And my quote ended up being like $10,500,
yeah,
which was really reasonable for that size table out of solid wood. But the minute I sent that through, it was just dead silence. No.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well,
yeah, fair enough.
Sit back and see what I'm doing. But yeah, good times.
All right, well, let's move on to a question. I've just got one question this week. That's all we've got time for. But this came from Rod last week. He says, I do art on thick slabs of hardwood, and with the router, I carve out the designs. The beauty is the different levels. The shadows make it a thing of beauty. Mm-hmm. The only problem is, with intricate details and being on hardwood, it is impossible to get the faint router circles out. And of course, in every light reflection, they do stand out, and no matter how faint. So I guess what you're saying there, Rod, is sort of on your inside corners, you get a bit of burning, or would that be it?
I think it's
a little swirl marks that you get from it.
Sorry. Okay.
I think it's from when you would flatten off a slab and you get you get
that little
line
shell pattern. Yeah.
Presumably, he's not using a CNC.
My suggestion would be, come to my factory when I get my new laser cutter, and I'll tell you what, I'll do one job for you, a couple of grand.
So I know from a lot of the slabs that I've flattened, now obviously this is because I'm not carving, like it's easy to get into there's no corners to get into, which I guess is what you might be struggling with. But I often see guys on YouTube, they do the router sled and they flatten a slab and then they come over with the orbital sander. There's no way I can do that. It's always the belt first and then the orbital sander, because you always end up with too much.
That is to do with the plumbness of the spindle.
Yeah.
And we had that trouble with our CNC a little bit, and it was like such a fraction of a degree out of being plumb. But once we sorted that, then we could flatten off kind of boards without that swirl mark. So that's almost certainly just going to be based off that, especially if you're doing it handheld. You're never going to hold that bit perfectly plumb.
Yeah.
Now, when he says carving, I assume it, because as a very, I don't know what you're doing, but if you were going to carve with a CNC, you would do all your rough cutting with the biggest bit possible and then work your way down. And the last pass would be with a 60-degree point bit, a very fine needle nose router bit. And that just makes thousands of passes about a millimeter apart. And then that just gets rid of everything, and you're just left with a texture that can be sanded down if you want to.
So you're talking about on a flat surface, you'd use like a point.
Yeah, but that if you're carving, not if you're just flattening off a plank.
Yeah, because that'd just take too long.
Like I'm reading that, as in I hear that question, and I think it's not the flattening operation that he's worried about. It's actually getting into the detailed carving. So whether it be like he's carved a shell or a dragon or something awesome like that.
Yeah.
And he's not able to clean it up to be smooth. And
right.
I would say the best solution for that would be to get a butt ton of scrapers and put custom profiles on it so you can just scrape the design smooth. Or if it's fairly large, as in like 50-cent piece or bigger, Arbortex contour sander. I've only played with this at demos, like, at wood shows, but that thing gets into pretty small and tight detailed areas. So it's on like a stem and it's only small rubber sort of foot. And that could be another tool to look at if it is the carving itself you're looking at cleaning up.
I suppose that you could actually go a bit old school and buy a couple of carving chisels. Yeah. And just, if you're just looking at getting into the tight areas, a carving chisel is going to give you a better finish than sandpaper. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that about the point. That makes so much sense, I guess, because then you eliminate that any concern about the plumbness. Well, to a certain degree, yeah. From my experience, and this is probably pretty straightforward, but I didn't realize it until I guess one of those what do they call it? Dirty window syndrome. You're using your bit for so long and you don't realize how blunt it's got until you put in the new bit, and then wow, so I guess that might help as well.
Yeah.
Do you guys sharpen your own router bits, or do you just buy new ones?
I've got one that I get sharpened, just because it's really expensive, like $300 bit. But I do find that every time it comes back from my sharpening service, it doesn't cut quite the same as it used to.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything else I just, I buy probably about $70 router bits. Yeah. That would be my upper limit generally, unless it's matched bits. And they last a good while, but to me, they're consumable. Once they go dull, I just replace it with the same one.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I've got a couple of sets of really good quality CMT door, rail, and style bits. And one of them is $500 worth. The other one, I think, is $300. And I probably could get them sharpened. I do know a place that would do it, but the chances of the profiles matching after a sharpen from just a random sharpener is just about it's never going to happen. So one of them I only run with pine, so this lasted me almost 5 years and it's still fine. I generally find that the sharpening isn't wonderful. You can you may as well just kind of stick with a slightly blunt one for a bit longer and save up for a new one, because it is difficult for them to sharpen the carbide.
Yeah. Because generally they just flatten the back until they get the new profile. But if they go more on one side than the other, then you're still only going to be cutting on one side of that router bit.
Yeah.
Like, it's a pretty difficult geometry to get right, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rod, I hope that was of some value. Yep. All right. So let's talk about what we've been watching. I'll start today. I had a really cool video by Andy Rawls. I mentioned him earlier. But this morning, I saw an even cooler video by Johnny Brooks. He's just released a wireless charging end table, which was quite interesting. So just to see, obviously myself having done one a couple of weeks ago, it was interesting to see how he did it. And it was, so he had a whole live edge top, and it was thick. It was really thick. And I thought to myself, how's he going to do this? And with his CNC, he plunged, must have been about 50 mil down for the charger to fit. And I just thought, there's no way with the CNC, obviously it's easy, but there's no way I would have, thought to go that deep into it. But Johnny Brooks Crafted Workshop, I've been on their their old podcast before. He's super cool dude. Wireless charging end table.
Did his video go viral?
I don't know. I saw it this morning, but yeah, I'm not sure how it's doing. But yeah, hopefully this will be a cool little trend where people all do wireless chargers.
I saw that being built on Instagram a little bit, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, he was doing a collaboration with Evan and
That's
Caitlin.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right.
Joey, how about you?
Been watching. I just found this morning. I don't know, random find on YouTube. I think you would say it, Padula Studio. It's a Sydney-based furniture maker. His latest video is an awesome oak, completely mitered desk. Like every side is mitered, and it looks awesome. It's got a drawer, push-to-open drawer in the middle of it.
The drawer is gorgeous.
Yeah, and the way he made that drawer, the inside of that drawer is awesome. Yeah. Go and check him out. Just a young channel at the moment, but I can see that he's just going to shoot off and overtake everyone. So
he's going to take off
for you, Joey. Yeah,
huh?
He's going to be some competition for you.
Yeah, man. He's and his workshop is like that's just so clean.
It's a dream workshop. That thing was insane.
Yeah.
No, I'm jealous of him. Who have I been watching? Oh, this great new channel called Periodic Furniture Studio. You guys haven't heard of it? No. Brian Benham or Burnham or something. I watched a video of his, which was like a mid-century modern console table thing, and yeah, just really nice table.
Cool.
That's all I have to say.
Cool.
So we'll have links to these videos or channels down below after the show once it goes live. That's about it for this show then. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
No more talk out.
Cool. One last thing that I want to mention before we go, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but I will over the next couple of weeks. We've talked about a meetup in Brisbane as part of the Wood Show that's coming up in May. There is now a Facebook event which we're directing people to. I'll have a link to it below. At the moment, we're still sort of putting out feelers, trying to get an idea of who's interested. There are a few people who are, so it's looking pretty good that like this is going to go ahead. But if you are interested in being part of this maker meetup in May, down below will be a link to the event. And yeah, we'd love to have all of you guys there with us. All right, so my name is Robin Lewis from Robin Lewis Makes. I was joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks and Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio. Thanks very much to everyone in the chat for hanging about and getting involved. This episode will be available on YouTube and iTunes and SoundCloud shortly after this. Just wanted to say thanks again to everyone for joining in, and we'll see you again next Thursday, same time.
See ya.
Bye.